Three, two, and one. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, welcome to This is a Revolution, your weekly Rev Pro podcast with myself, Cromulent George, and my good friend, Dave the Mark. How are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening, my good friend?
Yeah, I'm alright, mate. I'm alright. It's I'm really glad that we're back in the Rev Pro schedule. Like the 3 weeks off kind of felt like a lifetime, but back-to-back shows with very little rest and sleep in between, and I'm feeling it on Tuesday already. And so the week's barely started at work. It's going to get busier and busier as the week goes on, but can't complain. It's great to have Rev Pro weekends back on the schedule, and it looks like there's one pretty much every week for the next month. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it does look like that. Yeah, good mate. Very tired today as well, much like you. And the difference is I don't have to deal with children either, so I feel for you having that on your schedule as well. But yeah, it's been a very busy weekend. As I might have mentioned, some people, I did a charity walk for work, which it was interesting. It was in Winchester, which I've never been to before, and I was told it's a very flat walk. So my original plan was to do the 26-mile walk because I was told it was flat, and I was like, oh, I can probably bang out 26 miles at a push.
Really?
Yeah, right.
Far.
I didn't do it, mate. I didn't do it right. The mind is more willing than the body is. And then we got to like the bit where it's for the next one, and we got to this point where it was just like it killed me, like absolutely killed me off. So I dropped down, and I was just like, nope, it is not flat like people told me. So I was dead by the time I got home on Friday, and I went to the pub, had a nice toasty. They got home and curled up on the couch, ready for J-Cup on Saturday. And J-Cup was great, but just a long travel time back. The M40 junction was closed.
Really late, right?
1:30, and should have been home at 1:45. So but you know what? It is what it is, right? Like I got home, it was safe. The can of Monster that I had in the car kept me awake enough to see me through. It was a bit of an adventure because they decided not only were these roads being closed down, it was a junction for the M40 was closed, and then all 4 lanes were being condensed into one. So,
no. And
it was carnage. Like there was cars just deciding to cut out here and cut in front of me, and like it was like the best way I can describe it is like when you go to a car park, like a supermarket car park, and it's busy and everyone's just going wherever they want. It was kind of a bit like that. And I was just sitting there having a wonderful time, just kind of hanging back a little bit. And yeah, then the route was like, it was taking me, it was really confusing me actually, because I was going down a motorway that I've never been before. And it was telling me that I was on the route to South Wales, but also Reading. And I was like, how does this even work? Because my geography of where they... Yeah, and I think it's the motorway. So if we carried on this motorway where I came off, it would kind of, from where we were, it would start to branch off, I think. So I think that's what it was. But it was one of those ones that confused me because I was like, well, I know if I'm coming South Wales way, I'd probably be coming in down-ish that way, Bristol, Bath, Cheltenham, through to where I am from there, which I didn't really fancy at that time, and because it's a shit journey. But no, it kind of brought me back onto the motorway that I normally get on, just really late down the road. So there was some interesting driving maneuvers from me going on that night because I was in wrong lanes and just been like, I'm just going to put my foot on the brake and just cut across this roundabout. And there's one famously, which I don't think you'd go on your way out of Stevenage, I imagine. And it catches me every single time. And every time I think I've got it set which lane I'm going into, I always end up in the wrong lane and have to go back around again. Really annoys me. But that was about like the extent of my weekend. Went out for breakfast on Sunday and kind of got ready for work this week. And I think these dark nights they're already starting to get to me. Like 7:00 tonight, it was dark. They are, and that's and that's probably why I look a bit washed out on camera, because I've got a new camera because my old one died. I've got the big light on because I don't have enough good lights in this room otherwise to keep me lit up, and it's just nice and dark out there. So Hey ho, I'm a cheery sod, aren't I? So, you know what will cheer us up? Talking about some Rev Pro. But you know what, Dave? Before we get into actually this weekend, just want to kind of give a few shout outs of a few things that we've done this past week or two. It's been a really strange week for us on this channel, isn't it? With some of the videos we've been dropping, but I hope everyone's been enjoying them. The first interview that I've ever conducted. With one called Manders, which if you haven't watched yet, go and watch. It is such a fun time. Everyone that I've spoken to that has watched it has said the same thing, that just his charm coming across in the video, and just such a nice man to boot, wasn't
he? So much so, mate. And I think what I really like is the number of people that have spoken to me at the two shows over the weekend, or that have messaged me just to say how much they enjoyed the style of it, because that's kind of like that was a bit like kind of like the blueprint for how the interviews on this channel will work. We're never going to sit down and conduct that kind of, interview by numbers, the standard 10 questions that everybody asks. It's, like there's loads of places you can go watch those, and that they can be really interesting, but it's not really our style. Like we're two really good mates who love chatting about wrestling, and anyone who comes on we'll chat to about wrestling, and it was that natural vibe I really, really enjoyed, and I also really enjoyed the fact that that's what other people enjoyed about it.
Mm-hmm.
Manders is fucking awesome. Love the fella. So happy with how his weekend went, because he fucking smashed it out of the park. So I am no doubt in my mind we will see him lots more in Rev Pro in years to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was really good fun. And then obviously we had our episode with David Francisco as well, which was absolutely tons of fun, even if he did have me sweating a few times. And yeah, a great opportunity for us to have a wrestler come on and do a This Is a Revolution preview with us, where we talked before the J Cup, but also David talked up lots of things that are happening in Rev Pro that are surrounding him with Shah Samuels and Joshua James. But at the same time, we previewed the British J Cup, we previewed live in Sheffield, we talked all sorts of things, and again, something that hopefully we'll get a chance to repeat down the line as well.
Absolutely, we did a lot of stuff, and look, my wife said to me as soon as she watched that episode, she's like, "Why are you not smiling like Dave and Spike are?" And I was like, two things. One, you know what? Peel back the curtain a little bit. I was trying to stay in character a little bit. I hate when people say that. I didn't want to give David the easy ride that I knew Spike was going to give him, so I was trying to keep that poker face. But as I've alluded to multiple times, my tech died less than 12 hours before the interview, and I'm sitting there like watching everything, never done this kind of thing ever before, and trying to help conduct this podcast and produce on the back end, and I was told I didn't look like I was enjoying it in the moment, and it's probably because I was like, I hope I don't fuck this up. But it turned out wonderfully. It was wonderful. We all had such good fun, and I particularly enjoyed the fact that straight away David went for you. I love that straight away.
Literally straight off the bat, right? Like straight off the bat. But it was good fun. I enjoyed the crack, and you know what? He genuinely made me consider some things, because I think I'm consistent. I do like to think I'm consistent. I don't feel. I mean, obviously, we all have like our favourites, and I don't make any secret of the fact that there are some people in Rev Pro who I've got a special fondness for, like Sunshine Machine.
Mm-hmm.
But there's never a negative bias. There's nobody in Rev Pro that I find enjoyment in writing negatively about. And if I'm ever writing negatively, it's purely for the villainy that they have conducted at a Rev Pro show. And I themselves. Like, I'm going to have to fucking give Will Caven Villain of the Week, and that's going to kill me, because like, I bloody love the lad, but he was a dick on Saturday, and I'm going to have to call that. So, there's no bias there. But something Francisco said that did make me think was how he said that we are very quick to forgive people and forget the things that they've done. And it really made me think about Shah Samuels and Trent Seven.
Mm-hmm.
Shah Samuels, back in the day, was the biggest arsehole in Rev Pro. Like, an absolute bully, making every contender's life a living hell. And literally none of the fans liked him at all. He was like full on heat in all the ways he would have wanted and he would have enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But we forget that because everybody loves Shah now. You know, since he came back from Revolution Rumble last year, he's come back as like this, like, it's like a breath of fresh air in the sense that he's bringing sort of like all the nostalgia back and reminding you like he's such a top level wrestler.
Yeah.
And you're getting to see all these matches that you didn't think you'd get to see of sort of like one generation of British wrestling against the new set of British wrestlers. But he was right. We do forgive that. Trent Seven, you know, like he completely stole Michael Oku's moment when Oku won the championship in York Hall, and then walked into the copper box with Levi Muir carrying the belt. Like how, and it's remarkable how quickly Trent managed to turn everybody back. Because by the time his match with Volador Jr. had finished at Uprising, everyone was ready to cheer him again. He was so fucking funny with the, the best luchador in the world shtick that he was giving, that everybody, just myself included, you know, we're there like loving having Trent back in Rev Pro and forgetting about the fact that actually he was a proper dick. You know, he took a massive moment away from someone who had worked and grinded their arse off for it. And yeah, like credit where credit's due. Francisco properly made me think about the fact that, you know, sometimes you have to get your hands dirty. I've got no problem with that. Sometimes you do. I've praised Cameron Khai for wanting that Cruiserweight Championship more than anybody else and being prepared to do a bit of dirty work to get it when everybody else was more interested in, you know, showing respect to one another. So I get the hypocrisy kind of claim that he had, and I've always been, you know, I've said it a couple of times in articles saying I know that there's a little bit of rose-tinted glasses sometimes with some things, but with, you know, in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in 2 years' time, Francisco might be in a completely different position, and we'll all adore him, and will have forgotten all the like dastardly acts that he did to get there. Because I mean, let's face it, like 6 months ago, he was going into the Revolution Rumble, and he had just come out of the Contenders division. You think how far he's come in 6 months for him to be like one of the most talked about wrestlers in Rev Pro. His match with Shah Samuels feels like it should be the main event of that show. Whether or not it will be doesn't really matter. I mean, look at bloody RKJ versus Mike DeVecchio wasn't the main event of the Live in Sheffield show, despite it being like I was convinced that was going to be the main event. It doesn't matter because every match is a main event. Like the point is, his match feels like it should main event. So therefore, he's like a main event talent. Because of that, it could completely main event the show. Would who would have thought 6 months ago that True and Lacey would be in a main event slot for Rev Pro? Yet they main evented on Sunday and absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, that's no disrespect to True and Lacey whatsoever. It's just looking at where they normally are on the cards and where they normally are compared to where they were. But with Francisco, it feels like he's managed to, and I'm going to use this phrase because I can't think of a better way. He's managed to weasel himself into multiple kind of feuds and like stories and kind of permutations all at once.
Mm-hmm.
He's talked up the idea of the tag league with Santos, and he's got his ally in Santos. He's talking to us about who a trio partner could be for the trios Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his issue with Shah Samuels, and he's got his ongoing issue with Josh James, and him and Santos have got their eyes on Sunshine Machine. He's got so many irons in the fire that it's, like David Francisco could realistically be in multiple main events or main event adjacent matches between now and Christmas across multiple shows because of all of these kind of seeds that he's sown.
Yeah, he really could.
Absolutely fair play to the lad because he's made himself undeniable. And he's absolutely right. We do look at wrestlers with rose-tinted glasses. We are very selective in what we remember. And in 2 years' time, if he was the undisputed British heavyweight champion and he was going town to town wearing his, a different T-shirt for every town and getting the Southampton reaction, but everywhere, we'd all forget that he, bent a few rules to get there.
Absolutely, we would. And it was just such great fun to have him on. All the points you said there as well is entirely right. Also, just from the way that we've started this interview, I just want to say, sorry, Phoebe. That's going to mean nothing to anyone but one person, and that's fine with me. I'm keeping that one as it is.
I'll tell you someone who it will mean something to. It will mean something to Manders because Phoebe is my daughter, and she listens to our podcast. She comes to the Stevenage shows. She always used to come to the St. Neots shows, and will do when the Priory Centre's available. She makes her signs. She holds them up when the wrestlers come out. She goes and gets them to sign it afterwards. She's a proper little mark like me. But she hates swearing. And anyone who's listened to the podcast a lot or reads my articles knows that I fucking love swearing. It's one of my favourite things to do. I love words. And some swear words are my favourite words of all. On that note, don't call wrestlers a cunt at a family show, please.
Oh, thank you. You've just
that about?
Yeah, right. Okay, this is soapbox time. Yeah.
But Phoebe told me off for swearing last week too much. She told George off when she saw him for swearing too much, and she was properly going to tell Manders off for swearing. And she kind of bottled it just as she got to speak to him. But what was really funny was Luke Jacobs swore standing next to him, and he looks at Phoebe and he looked at me and was like, "Oh, sorry," like swearing in front of the kid. And Manders just turned to him and went, "It's all right. Phoebe's well tough." And it just absolutely popped her socks. She loved it. Popped my socks too.
I loved it when she went up with her little book with signs and asked for it to be. And again, look, I'm just gonna get back again on Manders, right, and just do another whole love in on him, right? Genuinely, like, I think I've slightly fallen in love with this guy in a bro kind of sense, but he was so gracious with us. The way he was with Phoebe and just the questions he was asking her, and just was amazing. It was so lovely. And like at the end of the show, he even said to me, he was like, "Did I do everything you needed on the podcast? Did I give you everything you wanted?" And it's just like, that guy, you can tell everyone that he interacts with, whatever it is, he wants to make sure he's giving everything to them. And it was just, yeah. And again, just seeing the way he was with Phoebe, and I'm just remembering it now. I have to actually remember her taking the book up and seeing how scared she was, because she's only little and he's very big. Even compared to me, he's very big. And top dude. And yeah, that's what I love. Like, yes, I'm a fully grown adult. I love the wrestling for me, but I love seeing like the way it is with the kids, because if I had that when I was younger, I like all these kind of role models that you can just go to week in, week out like that. And they are role models to those kids, right? In some way, shape or form. Even if they're not intentional role models, that they are role models to these kids. I just wonder like kind of what impact that had. But I remember the one interaction I had with a British Bulldog when I was a kid. And I remember that, carried out with me through the rest of my life. Like,
Absolutely. I didn't go to wrestling when I was a kid, but I went to West Ham when I was a kid, and we did. We used to go to the youth games, we used to go to the home games, we'd go and watch pre-season friendlies, we'd go to training. Like we were there all the time, and I remember like every interaction I had. Like, and you're talking about like a pretty kind of like prime time to be a West Ham fan. You're talking about like young Joe Cole, Rio Ferdinand, and Frank Lampard, and then you've got like Ian Wright and Paolo Di Canio and like players of like Slaven Bilic, like proper worldy players. And I remember all those interactions. And also what I love is I remember like, I lost my dad a few months ago, and like all my happy memories with my dad are going to the football together, going on family holidays. Like they're the things I remember. And drive down from Stevenage. Phoebe don't say anything in the car. She sits there quiet, and I mean, you know what she's like. She bloody don't shut up when she's at the wrestling. But in the car, she's really, really quiet. And she said to me, when I'm an adult, I'll still come to the wrestling with you. Like, that's our thing. We'll always go to the wrestling together. And it literally, like, it almost brought me to tears, because it was just like, I might have lost my dad this year and I don't get to do that sort of shit with him anymore, but I've got my own kids and I can do it with them. And it was so
that's like amazing.
Proper sweet. And you know what? All the wrestlers they make it so wholesome to bring your kids to. And yeah, Stevenage on Saturday night was a bit of a weird one for the fact that in terms of a few little pockets of fans, which we'll probably address. But on the whole, like, I don't know how many people there were at Stevenage on Saturday. I know the venue holds like a lot. So you're talking about like a fair few hundred people, and there's probably 4 or 5 idiots there, and everybody else is absolutely lovely. But the wrestlers treat the kids amazingly. The other fans treat the kids amazingly. Like, look at like Leo Rush at the end with all those kids coming up to the ring. And it's, it's lovely. It's just the odd person who needs to learn what not to say and
absolutely
show a bit more respect to the people that are busting their asses off in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I love that you've got those moments with Phoebe as well, because like, I don't have kids, but I went to the wrestling when I was like really little with my dad. That was the one time I've ever been with my dad. My dad was who got me into wrestling, and to be able to share the moment I did in Stevenage a few months ago myself was like, that was really important to me. And I can imagine how that was for you and Phoebe. Like, hearing her say that to you must have been such a lovely thing. And oh mate, I'm made up for you. That is so nice.
The scary thing is, so Phoebe comes a lot. Sophie comes every now and then. So she's my eldest. She's 10. She's autistic and finds she can find things quite overwhelming. So she picks and chooses if she's in the mood for the wrestling or not. And quite often I will take her to shows where I don't need to buy a ticket until the last minute. So I'll have my ticket at the doors, and then I'll just grab another St. Neots ticket for her, like, as and when. But I've always wanted my little boy to come. Like, he, out of the 3 of them, he watches the most wrestling, and he knows like the wrestlers so well. Like, he can tell you who's who. I remember saying on here that when the Beast Mortos debuted in AEW, he walked in and was like, "That's Black Taurus." I was like, "Yes, mate, it is Black Taurus." And he was like, he recognised him from me watching Impact at home.
Amazing.
And his knowledge is phenomenal. He is very much like, who is the strongest wrestler? He's an autistic little lad as well, and he's like a very typical autistic little boy. So he's very much obsessed with like, who is the strongest? The strongest will win. And he thinks that like Will Ospreay is the strongest wrestler in the world. That's kind of like what he's picked up from me. So anytime Will Ospreay's been like, Will Ospreay will win, he is the strongest. And then I'll kind of like have to be like, yeah, but if they hurt his neck, then it doesn't matter if they're stronger or not, because they'll have a weakness. And he's like, oh, and then he starts to get into like the in-ring stories and stuff. but he's never wanted to go to the wrestling because he wouldn't. I don't know how it would go. He wouldn't be able to sit still for that amount of time. He struggles. Like, he gets one-to-one support at school and stuff like that, so he would struggle with the rules of going to wrestling in terms of like,
yeah,
like you when the wrestlers come out, you can high five them and stuff, but you can't. You can't get up. You can't go and walk to them. You can't touch the ring. Like, there are little rules here that he would have to learn. But he's never wanted to. He was always like, no, I like watching it on the telly. I like watching it at home. It would be too scary to watch live. And what is really interesting, when on Saturday, I said to him, dude, today I'm watching Kid Lykos versus Kid Lykos 2. And he was just like, what? And I was like, yeah. He said, why are they fighting? I said, well, it's a tournament, so everybody wants to win the tournament. So if they're going to win the tournament, they'll have to beat the other one. And he was like, can I come? And I was like, oh, mate, like, I would love you to come, but we've got designated seats. And I even looked just to see if anybody bought a ticket either side of us, and obviously they had. But he's so excited to watch it on demand. Like, I'm waiting till an evening where we can actually sit and watch it properly, and it won't be like rushed. And it was that match is one I'm excited to talk about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm hoping I'm going to get in there. I might try and get into one of the days of the trios tournament because I think he'll love that.
That'd be good. Yeah, because you have so many big characters, right, with all the luchadors there.
Yeah, exactly. And Coventry's about an hour for us. And if he does the Saturday night, it doesn't matter. It's not like he's got to go to school the next day. So, we'll see.
Oh, nice.
The only problem is if it goes, the thing I'd always said to Em, my wife, was, if I take him and it's a disaster, I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? We'll just have to leave, won't we? If after the first couple of matches he is just done, we'll just kind of, sneak our way out. Nobody will notice. It won't be the end of the world. And now I'm like, oh no, because that means I miss the rest of it. And if I take him to the trios tournament and we have to leave, I'll be really fucking pissed off about that. But I want him to get into wrestling. I really do want him to get into wrestling, but I want it to be organic. I don't want to push it on him. Wrestling is literally always on in our house. Wrestling's on TV. Nick Cave's on Spotify. The kids know them both really, really well. And if they grow up enjoying them, amazing. And if they don't, no worries. I've learned quite a lot about Five Nights at Freddy's and anime from my daughter. So, it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, I remember when my nephew showed the briefest sign of being into wrestling, right? So when it comes to Christmas, I like spending money on people at Christmas, right? It's just my thing. I like buying presents. That's what I get the enjoyment out of, buying presents. When my nephew showed the briefest thing of getting into wrestling, right? We had our budgets. I was like, right, we're going to spend £50 on the nephew, £50 on the niece. I've spent 150 quid on the nephew because I went out and bought him a ring. I bought him all the figures because I was like, I've got an excuse to go and buy and like try and get him in. And he lasted about a year. And then it was like, oh, he's back out now.
That's quite a long time in kid world.
He absolutely is. But I was hoping it's the thing that would stick. And now, no, he doesn't care about it now, and he cares about Chelsea Football Club. So, oh, yuck. But before we... Yeah, there is that. Not just for the result of the weekend, just Spurs in general. Spurs, the only group of supporters that can make me actually appreciate Arsenal. Saying something for you. Before we get into the episode,
we turned off some listeners.
Yeah. Sorry, Andy.
I'm not listening to them anymore. They don't like Spurs. No one likes Spurs.
Yes. Suddenly, Andy Quilden subscribes to the podcast. Before we get into the episode as a whole, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to share my favourite Phoebeism from Saturday as well, just because it's just come back to me. And the reaction, the look on your face. So what I loved was, like you said, about her being quite inquisitive and talking throughout the show. And I loved it because I was listening in, because I thought it was really great that she was just talking away and asking questions, like showing an interest. And she was asking, like, I think it was where Barbaro was from and stuff like that. And why, like... Yeah. So yeah, don't worry, it's not as bad as we think. But she was just trying to make sense of why people weren't cheering him as much. And I think you said, well, he's from Mexico. Not people aren't as familiar with some of the Mexican. That's why. Because I think who was he against? I'm looking at the card in front of me.
Barbao versus Leo.
Yes, that's what I thought it was. And obviously, Leo's more well known because he's on TV.
And a massive reaction.
Yeah, because
Barbaro played up to it with the like spitting and stuff like that, and he got all the boos.
Yeah, and because obviously Leo comes over here a lot more often, he's on TV. People know him more, so that's why they gravitate towards him. And I remember you explaining that not as many people are familiar because of where he wrestles. And I just loved. She turned around and said, "So people, so people think people from Mexico are bad people, or something like that." And it was just yeah.
No one likes Mexican wrestlers. I was like,
that's what I'm saying. But the look on your face, Dave.
Oh mate, it's just like kids say stuff, and it's absolutely nuts. Like, oh mate, honestly, this story is mental. So Isaac's autistic.
Dave, before we get into the show proper, I just want to go over two things. First of all, I've got a really interesting little stat about the podcast. Do you have any idea what that stat could be?
No.
Well, I can tell you, Dave, right? For all of the wonderful viewers that we had watching our Manders video and for our David Francisco video, and there were a lot of viewers, only 76% of the people who watch those videos are not subscribed to this channel. So guys, please, if you like what you saw, subscribe, because there is a lot of you who watched. We are trying to reach a wide audience. As we said before, we don't get paid to do this. We're not in RevPro's pockets. Andy Quilden isn't sitting there giving us a call and going, do you want some more free tickets? There's none of that going on here. We do this for the love of the game because we enjoy doing what we do and we enjoy this promotion. We enjoy RevPro. So please consider giving us a subscribe, a like, a share, leave comments, all of that good stuff, and it pushes on the YouTube algorithms. But also, we touched on earlier that we've done some interviews already, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we're pretty much at a stage where I think they're going to, over the next couple of weeks, we might be hitting the record button with a couple of other wrestlers who, the only kind of thing I'm going to say to you is I could almost imagine Dave's happy dance when I sent him a screenshot of the two, or I should say two of the ones that we've been in contact with, and if we pull these off, it is going to mean big things for this channel. So again, subscribe, be on the YouTube channel ready, and as soon as you're subscribed, they will just pop up. And yeah, I'm not jinxing it by saying who, but these are names that you've heard of for sure. These are names you heard of, and I'm not saying anything more than that.
When these drop, people will know who we're talking about. They'll know which ones we're so excited for.
Absolutely. So yeah, get subscribed. Please contribute by likes, shares, subscribes, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of that good stuff. It means the world. We've seen a bit of growth on the old subscriber front. I would love to try and finish the end of the year on 100 subscribers. I'm not sure if we'll get there, but considering we started in June, Dave, I'm pretty happy with where we are so far. But there is more content to come. There is a lot more content to come. If we can grow this channel, if you're enjoying what you're watching and you want to see it grow, just give it the like, because all of those things will contribute to that growth over time.
100%.
So
remember a stat I told you on Saturday?
Oh.
At the start of the J-Cup, I snuck out the fact that
yes, you did.
For the last 2 years in a row, the first person to walk through the curtain at the start of the J-Cup has lifted the J-Cup at the end of the night. Who came out first on Saturday, George?
Oh, has that been Leo Rush, Dave?
Who held up the J-Cup at the end of the night on Saturday, George?
Oh, that'd be none other than Leo Rush, Dave.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
you'd love to see
so
it.
happy with that result.
Yeah, same. That was my preferred result. I mean, I know we were talking about beforehand and we were kind of looking at and we were all trying to come up with a different name, but when he got announced, I was like, oh, I just want to see Leo succeed at every opportunity. So I was really happy with that.
And do you know what I really like? I don't think, so personally, I've said this before, I don't think the Cameron Khai story benefits from him winning the J Cup now.
No.
I think that is, I'll put my money on it right now. Cameron Khai will win the J Cup next year. Like, I'd stick my money down on it now. Unless something dramatic happens in the next 12 months, that feels like the safest bet you're going to come up with. I don't think that, I think Robbie X being a 2-time J Cup winner would be really cool. And I think that would be great for him. I don't think he needs it. Like, and especially now we know that the TMDK stuff wasn't just like breadcrumbs that led to nowhere. The Lykos and Lykos 2 one seemed really unlikely because the fact that they've only appeared at Fantastica Mania UK this year, and then the J Cup they're people that dip in and out of Rev Pro as and when's needed. Proper like journeymen around the BritWres scene, but also people that have heavily featured in other companies. And I'd love to see them featured more in Rev Pro. I bloody love the lads. But the timing of it wasn't right. So then you look at the 4 imported names, all of whom have got a bit of history in Rev Pro, but none of whom have got more history in Rev Pro than Leo Rush.
Yeah.
We've seen him at Portsmouth Guildhall, we've seen him at the 229, we've seen him in York Hall, we've seen him in the J Cup before in Stevenage. Like, for me, he felt like the best bet beforehand. And if you also look at the reactions of the wrestlers got on the night, he was the most over guy. Like, in there, he was so over in Sheffield as well. Like, people love Leo Rush. Of course they fucking do. He's like, my little girl hadn't seen him before. I don't know how, but she hadn't seen him on the telly, or if she had, she couldn't remember him. And all I said to her was, just wait until he starts running. And when he starts running, you're going to fall in love with him. And she was like, is he that quick? And I was like, you're not ready for how quick he is. And he and you know what? Also, that doesn't even do him a fair service, because that's just to say, like, he's a really fast cruiserweight wrestler. Leo Rush is like underrated at so many other aspects of wrestling.
He is.
And I think he was the right call. Really happy with it. And do you know my favourite thing about the J Cup this year? And I thought about it when I wrote an article in sort of like the quiet season between J Cups and the 229. I wrote lots of articles, keeping the Dave the Mark content coming. And one of them was about like an introduction to J Cups, like if you hadn't seen J Cup before. And I picked J Cup to kind of feature. I picked last year's. I really, really enjoyed last year's. Of all the J Cup shows, it's my favourite one. But when I look back on it, one of the reasons it's my favourite one is for all the non-J Cup matches that are on that show that were awesome. Like the J Cup main event was really good fun. And then you had Luke Jacobs and RKJ that was amazing. You had Kanji and Alex Windsor that was amazing. You had Gabe Kidd and Michael Oakley that was amazing. And then you had the 4 J Cup first round matches that were all like really good and like, completed the card. This year, I felt like the J Cup matches were the focal point, and the other 2 matches were just a really nice palate cleanser. They weren't it wasn't like, come to the J Cup and you'll see this massive match. It was, come to the J Cup for the J Cup, because the J Cup is the draw. And I absolutely loved it. Yeah,
I would say the same. And I think that's a real key thing. Do you want to tell what I really loved about this J Cup? Right. So obviously this is my first one I've attended in person. And I actually don't think I've sat and watched a J Cup for Rev Pro. So this might actually be my first J Cup. What I really loved about it was that every single match I called correctly, right? Now, you could look at a show and go, well, if you've called every match correctly, why is that a good thing, right? Now, I called every match correctly, but I didn't feel that it was a particularly like predictable card. So that's what so I loved it. Like every match, I go, oh, I kind of got what I wanted and what I thought would happen, but not in a oh well, it's so obvious Leo's going to win this. It's so obvious Kid Lykos 2 is going to win this. It's so obvious this person's going to win this or this person's going to win this. Like yes, I was able to predict everything that happened all night. But I feel that there's a world where this could have gone on and it would have made complete sense for every other match to have been different. Like, and that's what I loved about it all. Like it had the making sense of it all. There was a sense of it being able to be predicted, but not predictable. And I think that's a fine line for wrestling shows to walk, where before a match even happens, you go, I know who's winning this one, right? Because sometimes that takes the drama out of it. And if you've got that, like, let's be honest, right? Manders versus Luke Jacobs. We know how that was going to go, right? So for that, you just want that to be like almost like a special attraction match. If you had that same feeling in the J Cup where there was real stakes to the tournament, it would have just taken away from it. So I'm really pleased with how it went. I think you're right that there was that storyline thread the whole way through, and it went through the entire weekend as well about the J Cup and the Cruiserweight title. Like, it was a real celebration of the Cruiserweight title this weekend. And the other matches, I want to say, they felt like tacked onto it in a good way. Like you said, here is your bit. This is the palate cleanser in between, right? And I loved how the Cruiserweights are allowed to shine. We'll talk a bit more about the crowd a little bit later, because I know we both have some views, and spoiler, I'm probably going to get my soapbox a little bit. But one of the things I'm going to tell you I loved about the crowd, right? So we mentioned earlier about it being like real family shows, right? Now, I think there's a real fine line. Oh, look at this content. There is a real fine line. I thought that was what was going on when I saw you just like looking down and then grabbing a brush. I was like, this is going to be great. One of the things that I think can happen sometimes at shows, and I've seen it, is where parents just allow their kids to do whatever they want, right? It's almost like it's a free-for-all, like, you're looking after my kids for me, they're just going to go do what they want. And what I liked about Stephen, both of the times I've been, is that the parents and kids, they have this fine line between like wanting to get involved in the action. Oh, I'm seeing double cats now. I would get involved in the action, right, with what's going on, but not like being like getting in the way and stuff like that. They're just enjoying it. And there was this group of these little lads who the whole night, they were just down from us if we kind of look down that way. Oh, mate, they were my favourite thing all night because they were just so into it. And I was saying this, and I think I said to you, I said to the wife when I got home, right, what I loved, like when I was a kid, the Warlord, to me, was the scariest guy that ever existed in WWF, right? Like, now I watch it, and he's like a mid-card baddie, right, who you're looking at, as an adult, you get, yeah, all right. But as a kid, it was like, oh my God, like, big deal. And that's what Leo Rush was to these kids. He was just this big deal. But not just Leo, like Lykos and Lykos 2, Robbie X. And it was I found it really interesting, actually, that all these people that were there, it was a lot of the British guys that were gravitated towards as well, which I really liked as well, because they didn't look at it going, he's from here, or you imagine the size they are. They're not looking at where he's from or anything like that. They're just looking at wrestling and go, wow, I love this guy. And I loved that the whole night. So I did find it a little bit hilarious when Leo did go and stand with them though, and he wasn't much taller than him, bless him. But it was so lovely to see the way he was treating the kids throughout the night as well, and just that, again, bringing them into it. They were loving the show, and that really helped with the atmosphere as well, because one of the things that I struggle with being an adult sometimes at shows, and although you wouldn't have believed it from apparently being told that you could hear us cheering for Cameron Khai above the whole crowd, but like it takes that, like, for me to be with someone like you to really come out of my shell, because there's two of us doing it. Whereas these kids, they don't care. They're just out there shouting and screaming, and it actually really helps with the atmosphere as well, which I think for a tournament like this, if you've got that great atmosphere going. So yeah, this is kind of the thing that I love about that kind of style of show and style of crowd as well. But that first match, really fun match. It was the first time I've seen Barbaro live before. bigger guy than I was expecting. Actually, he is physically bigger.
He's something, isn't he? He's absolutely something.
Yeah, I was expecting a really quite a small guy.
He does. I can't even tell you what moves he does. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, some wrestlers you can go through their moveset because you've seen them wrestle so many times. You've been privileged to see them so many times. You know certain moves they like to pull out. I don't even know what some of the moves Barbaro was pulling out or even called. Like he is so unique. And I mean that not just in his presentation, but in the way that he works in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
But he takes your breath away. He does things where you're audibly kind of reacting, whether it's sort of like gasping or whether it is just being like, oh, that was cool. What was that? I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he got reactions. And one thing that I absolutely loved, I had this wonderful spot in Sheffield. I tend to always sit in the same spot in Sheffield. Just I've got a couple of mates up there who are always. We always try and I'll tell you one thing I bloody love about Sheffield, and people who haven't been to Sheffield but go to other Rev Pro shows will have their mind blown by this. I turned up 30 minutes before the doors opened, and there were 9 people in front of me in the queue. There's 9 people in the 229 queue by 11 o'clock in the morning. The show don't open till 3:30.
Yeah.
I love how in Sheffield it's just like the show starts at 4. We'll be there by 4 o'clock. And it was banged. It was absolutely banged out, the network. It was one of the busiest ones I've been. I think it was my 4th time at the network, and it was the busiest I've seen it.
Nice.
But I love how they just don't have the politics or the anxiety, it seems, of the getting to the queue really early. So I'm sat at the front, and behind me was a lovely group of people that I ended up kind of interacting with a couple of times. But also you can always hear the people behind you having their chats, right? And the dynamic that I quickly realised was there were a couple of people who had been to wrestling before, but didn't necessarily go to wrestling often. They'd just been like, oh, let's go watch some wrestling. This could be fun. But they clearly watch wrestling. Mm-hmm. Then you had a couple of people that they were with. I think it was their girlfriends, who one of them I've watched a bit of wrestling before. I'm familiar with the concept of what wrestling is in terms of the sport / art form. And one of the women was just like, I literally have no idea what I'm watching. But, theatre, it'll be fun, it'll be entertaining. And they were great. They were such good form because they embraced it and they enjoyed it and they had a whale of a time watching something they'd not seen before. When Barbaro came out, this woman was just like, oh, what's happening here then? This is very different to all the other people that came out. You think all the other wrestlers come out to a proper rock tune, or they come out to a kind of, I don't even know what we call it, but the Cameron Khai / Dan Maloney / Alec Windsor, that kind of the rap kind of.
I think these days they call it drill, Dave.
You know what I mean? It's kind of the alternative entrance theme for the non-rock fan. Then you get the odd one where it's Zozaya's is really different. Is get up and dance to Barbaro's theme. Then he comes out with the caveman stuff, and they're literally just what's this? Is this? Are we laughing at this? Are we taking it seriously? What is it? Comedy? Is it serious? And then he starts wrestling, and you're just like, oh, who cares? He's fucking awesome. He's great to watch. I really enjoyed both his matches. I think his match with Zozaya was my favourite of the two.
Yeah, same.
And I enjoyed. I find it fascinating. I would love to know if he made the conscious decision before they came out that he was going to work heel. Or if when he came out in Stevenage, he just reacted to the crowd.
Yeah.
because his wrestling doesn't scream heel or face, but you could tell the second, like he had a moment, he looked at the crowd, he listened to them chanting for Lio Rush, and he decided, or at that point, that's when he started doing the kind of gesturing to the crowd, the spitting, the you know, the spit
phlegm,
dripping out and then pulling it back up, and it struck me as one where it's like, I wonder if that was always the plan, if he does that every show. But I've seen him wrestle before, and he wasn't like that. Or if it was just okay, they're going to boo me, I'll give them something to boo. They want to cheer for him. They can cheer for him. I'll make sure they don't cheer for me. And it was really enjoyable to watch from that side. The match with Leo was really good fun. It was a really good opening match. It was perfect length. It had all the fun and excitement that you would want from a cruiserweight match without kind of like outlasting how long it needed to be. And then I thought Barbao's even stronger performance was Zozaya on Sunday when he had a little bit more time, and obviously he went over, so he got that kind of like that momentum from it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about time, it was the shortest match of the night, which that's what you want to do, right? You want to get in, be snappy, sort of set your bar, right? I think that's really important because you don't want to have the best match of the tournament in the first round, or the first match of the first round, right? You want to build up to it, and I think that's what they did really well with the pacing of this card. It felt like, and I'd be interested, like you were as well, actually, to find out, because it really felt like, with it being a more family-friendly show, what I find with the Stevenage ones is not that they play down the wrestling, but the wrestling and the wowing in the ring probably isn't as at the forefront as it would be at maybe a Sheffield show. And that's not to say that they're not doing great stuff in the ring, but they will rely a little bit more on the character and the interaction and the stuff, right? They do that a bit more at the family-friendly show because they can, right? Like, you don't have to go balls to the wall for everything. But even then, still a great high level of wrestling, better than you're going to see anywhere else. And that's just talking about Rev Pro standards there. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know if he did decide on the fly or not, because it was so good at it. But it was interesting because, like, I've only ever seen the guy wrestle twice, right? Or 3 times now with the other one. But when he came out to Fantastica Mania, which was the first match I saw, I'm pretty sure it was a Fred Flintstone costume he was wearing. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't sure. I was like, is this guy supposed to be serious? Is he supposed to, like, the things you were going through earlier? I didn't know. And so that's why I was interested this time. I was like, what's he going to be this time? And he obviously had that more rugged look to him. And yeah, just came out and absolutely bossed as a heel. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the fact that Leo went over. And I think it did well to showcase both men without having to, like, be their best match of the weekend, because we saw better matches from both men, and that's what you want. You want to come in, set the standard of what the tournament's going to be, and I would say out of all of the matches, that was probably like the one I'm least likely to go back and watch in terms of a pure in ring, but I remember that was very good. So if that's that's just my, here's your standard for the weekend, everything's going to be higher than this. Amazing, right?
Yeah. I also like how, there was 4 cruiserweight matches to set up the cruiserweight final, and they were 4 very different cruiserweight matches.
Absolutely.
And Barbaro and Leo's kind of had, it's like Lykos and Lykos 2 had the technical, really clear story of Lykos 2 kind of showing that he was on Lykos's level. You had Cameron and Robbie working the kind of, Cameron proving to Robbie Eagles that he was like an equal to him, as opposed to Robbie Eagles kind of being like the experienced, like really good solid hand that's come into the J Cup to, be a draw and bring people in and sell TMDK t-shirts and promote Royal Quest. And, Cameron was not just there to make up the numbers. Cameron was there to prove that he was the best there is. you know, on a par with someone who is arguably one of the best junior heavyweights in the world. Robbie X versus Dante Martin was the classic speed dream match. Named like two of the most exciting to watch cruiserweights in the world. Put them in a match together. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Barbaro and Leo kind of had a less obvious dynamic, but also it's like they had to kind of tell a bit more of a broad story because you don't want to take anything away from any of the other matches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, you don't want to do too much technical stuff when you know that the next match is going to be a real kind of clinic. Yeah. You don't want to do too much of like Leo patronising Barbaro or Barbaro patronising Leo because you know that's coming in with Robbie and Cameron. Mm-hmm. And you also don't want to go a million miles an hour and then, you know, Dante and Robbie don't look like quite as impressive when they're in their match because Leo kind of outshone them earlier on in the show. Like, I thought it was really, really tactically well put together. And Leo Rush, like we said earlier, I think he was the most over guy on the card. He got the biggest reactions of any wrestler. So putting him on in the opening match in a way that allowed the shine and the spotlight to go on the other matches was really like really kind of selfless on his part and really good booking on Andy's part.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with his Heinz baked beans kit pads, Dave, the man is an honorary Brit. I agree with your entire assessment there of the field. And the thing that I wasn't expecting was with that second match, Kid Lykos 2 versus Kid Lykos, I was expecting the one-upmanship, right? The whole trying to prove he's on the same level. I wasn't expecting the technical match that we got. That really shocked me.
It was so good. Yeah. Like, I can't put it over enough.
Yeah, one of my favorite.
It's a match that I will remember for a long, long time, and it's probably one that I will go back and watch multiple times because it was. I mean, if you follow me or listen to me talk a lot or read stuff that I write, you know that I love this kind of wrestling. I love technical wrestling. I love in-ring storytelling. They're things that I live for. And this had, like, the technical wrestling was incredible. Like, I've had the joys of watching Zack Sabre Jr. and Jordan Breaks, and, you know, the joys of Zack and Hechicero and Robbie X and Kushida, matches like that over the last couple of years where you're just like, that was technically beautiful. This was really, really special as well. I'm not comparing in the sense, I'm not saying one was as good as or better than the other. I'm just saying that they were special matches and this was special too. And the near falls in the second, like in that kind of final third, were just so perfectly done because they did loads and loads of near falls where you completely believed they were going to be the finishers of the match without it being like a finisher spam. They were just technical pinfalls as opposed to finishing move, kick out, finishing move, kick out, finishing move, 1, 2, 3. Like, it was, I absolutely loved it. And do you know what? I'm not surprised because for years, literally for 2 years, I've raved about Francesco Akira versus Kid Lykos 2 in Birmingham, which was, I think, was it, a year and a half it was. A year and a half ago. It feels like longer. It doesn't surprise me at all that Lykos 2 pulled out this other banger. It was the best Kid Lykos match I've seen, which sounds like kind of like faint praise. Is that the right phrase?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same. Yeah,
I haven't seen many Lykos singles matches. I saw him wrestle Robbie X for the cruiserweight title in the 229, which would have been January last year. I saw him work with TK and Chuck in places like St. Neots and stuff. I've never seen him have like a high profile singles match in Rev Pro other than that Robbie X match. And this was the best of those few that I've seen. I'm sure he's had lots of great singles matches all over Britain because he's a great wrestler. But this is the one now where it's like all future Kid Lykos matches I watch, I will be comparing to this. This is now his like pinnacle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've seen Lykos not in Rev Pro, but in other promotions, in high-profile singles matches. Enjoyed them a lot. This was my favourite because it had that inbuilt story with it. It had a great story to tell, but it's like everyone would have been expecting them to come into this doing really big, high-flying stuff, I think. So they flipped the script, and what they were able to do with the high fly and real nimble footwork that these guys have, they were able to utilize that to get themselves into like really crafty technical holds, right? So there was one spot I remember where I can't remember how they got into it. They kind of got into it, and then Lykos 2's doing an octopus stretch. I think that's the one that I'm thinking of. Right on, and you're like, where did that come from? Like it was just stuff like that because of how quick, agile they are. It enabled that to be. So quick. Yeah, they enabled the moves to go on quicker.
They moved at a pace I've never seen either of them move at.
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe that comes from the fact that they know each other so well and they trust each other so much. But it was just, honestly, if for whatever reason you do not have time to watch the 3-hour show from the J Cup, and you've got enough time to watch 20 minutes of wrestling or 15 minutes of wrestling this week, go and watch this match. It was my match of the night by a long way. It was my match of the night. It was 100% my match of the night. There were other matches that I loved as well, but for completely different reasons. In terms of like I thought like this was the best match of the night. I thought it was the best match of the J Cup. It was the one I was most fascinated by and studied. Mm-hmm. I literally didn't take my eyes off it. Loved every second of it. My other match of the night from the J Cup, the other one that I kind of hesitated then, was Manders versus Luke.
I can tell.
It's so the opposite of this. It could not be further away from what Lykos and Lykos 2 did. And that's kind of like that. But then that also had a lot of special sentiment. You know, I've grown very, very fond and attached to Manders from our experiences with him. And I got to see him work for the first time in person. So it was like really special, as well as the fact that it was a fucking banger. But the Lykos 2 one, I had the lowest bar going into it for me, because once they started bickering on Twitter, I thought maybe I'd got it wrong. But up until then, what I thought, because we talked for a long time about would they pair off against each other, would they not? And I thought if they do pair off against each other, I think it'll be a comedy match. And I think it will be which shithouse can shithouse the most. And it would be them constantly trying to, you know, a little bit like when you see like Toru Yano in New Japan have a match against someone who is equally as cheaty, like Yano versus Yujiro Takahashi, something like that, where they will literally just out cheat one another until one of them wins. I thought that's what it was going to be, and I was up for it. I thought it'd be really good fun. I trust the two lads to do it in a really compelling way, but I thought it would be like Barbara and Leo have a banger, Robbie and Cameron have a banger, then we get this fun little cheeky comedy match, and then we get Dante and Robbie. I wasn't expecting this clinic that we got, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, one of the final things I'll say on this match before we move on. First of all, like definitely, probably my match of the night as well. Certainly my favourite J Cup match of the night in terms of single matches, and the one I'm really looking forward to go back and watching to see how good it was. Like, 'cause obviously we had a great spot from our seat, but I always find it's really interesting to watch again afterwards. I think this will definitely be one that's on my shortlist for the second half of the end of year awards that we'll do, or certainly matches, because not only do we have our second half to do, we're probably going to have to do it in two parts, because we have our second half of what are the best 10 matches for the second half of the year. but then we have to try and do our top 10 for the whole year as well, which put that into order. And yeah, but one of the key points I really liked that you mentioned as well, right? Because they really played up this story where Lykos was he was not having it, was he? Like, you could see a couple of times just teasing a bit of dissent, and put these guys into the tag league now with that hanging over them, right? With Lykos 2 not getting the job done at the end, right? And I know that wasn't played up, but it could lean into that. And it's those breadcrumbs, isn't it? Like we keep saying, it's the breadcrumbs that this could lead somewhere. It could just go down here and it could go into the tag league and have a lovely time. But they could go down here and then start maybe that thing that we saw with Sunshine Machine that I wanted to see happen. Maybe, in fact, it has what happens with Lykos Gym here. Who knows what is going on? But I thought it was a really good story to tell. But this would be the one that I would tell people to go back and watch. As is the next match. I really love this next match as well. Cameron Khai versus Robbie Eagles.
I waited a long time for Robbie Eagles in Rev Pro, and over this weekend he did not disappoint in the slightest.
I bet he didn't, mate. So my experience is watching Robbie Eagles, like, it's been watching a few New Japan matches, and I thought the guy's good, right? But to me, he didn't really stand out in any way, right? In the matches I watched, and I find that sometimes actually getting to see someone up close the first time, because when I say didn't stand out, that's probably not through him. That's probably because me watching wrestling on TV, after going to so many events now, I find it much harder to connect with TV wrestling than I do in person. And when I watched him in person, I was like, wow, I love this guy. Like, he was much more technical than I remembered him being on TV.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I was not expecting to play up such a good heel kind of role either. He just seemed someone that was like really natural likable guy to me. So when he was playing that up a bit more, I really connected with what he was putting out there on Saturday night, and I loved it. But as much as I was like, I expected Cameron to win his match, I won't lie, when this one got announced, I was like, there was that seed of doubt in me going, surely not. And I think that was a smart move as well. Because
I did not think Robbie Eagles would come into Rev Pro for the weekend and go home with 2 losses.
Yeah.
I thought he'd win both matches and get knocked out in, put in a good performance in the final and get knocked out in the final. Anyone can lose in the J Cup final and it be politically absolutely okay with like their parent company, because it's so easy to do. You have the person who's getting pinned take the finisher off of 2 of the people that are in the match. And then you're like, well, of course they're not going to get up from that. And that's absolutely fine. It wasn't a one-on-one singles match. But I love the fact that Robbie came in and was so happy to be like, I'm here to put people over. I'm here to put Cameron Khai over. I'm here to put Robbie X over.
Yeah.
The match with Cameron was really good. I really enjoyed it. The match with Robbie X was a completely different level.
Yeah.
Like, it was just special. And again, match of the night for me, oh mate, that Sheffield show. I mean, I've said it a few times this year now, and I'm ready to actually hang my hat on it. The Stevenage and Sheffield weekends, the Sheffield show wins every time. Like, Sheffield beat Epic Encounter, Sheffield beat Raw Deal, Sheffield beat the J Cup. There's something about it. I don't know if it's like the guys are more relaxed when it comes to the Sheffield show. I don't know whether it's because the matches that they put on for the Sheffield show often give you like kind of matches that you've wanted to see for a long time, and you're like, okay, we're going to do this one for Stevenage, but then we're going to put these 2 together for Sheffield. Like, it's just, you get some really special shows up there, and I absolutely love it. Sheffield has become one of my favourite places to go on the Pro circuit, and that Robbie versus, you think Robbie Eagles versus Robbie X went on second, like that's how strong that card was, and their match was absolutely insane.
Yeah, and the match that I thought was going to main event, like you thought was going to main event, didn't main event. Like, it was such a strong card. But Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know. I think there's definitely something into it with Stevenage being more of a family friendly show. There's a different
Yeah.
kind of tact that gets taken with the card, and I enjoy it for what it is. But I can't help every time you know that meme, right, where it's like the guy walking down the street with his girlfriend, and he's like looking at the woman that's gone by. Right, I'm not gonna lie, that's me. The woman who's like making the face is the J Cup or Stevenage show, and the one walking by is the Sheffield show. That's kind of like what I'm like. Oh, that looks a bit. And there's always something on it. Like I was so jealous that Mike DeVecchio wasn't on Stevenage. I was so jealous. Robbie Eagles versus Robbie X was on, and like don't get me wrong, I'm happy with what we've got because it was a great show. But it's just like, oh, and you know what, right? We've spoken a lot on the pod about TMDK, and then I don't even follow New Japan all that much. And I got up on Sunday morning, and I was about to text you and be like, right, so when did we hear about TMDK? What's going on? Because we know that like we think it's gonna be Robbie X, but then the person's gonna be announced on the show, and like we went through all the mental gymnastics, didn't we? Of like, right, if he leaves Steve, because I think we even said if Robbie's in the first match and he loses, and then he gets driven straight to the airport, and then what time will he arrive? What time? And we worked out that I think
even then it was like it's physically not possible. It's a 14-hour flight to Kobe. Like he's not going to get there. And so then I even went back and watched the Zack Sabre Jr. interview again and was like, does he definitely say, like, we're going to see a new TMDK member? And then when the card got announced, you're looking at it being like, oh, no, it's Zack Sabre Jr., Kosi Fujita, and question mark versus United Empire. So you know someone's there. And that's when it was like, okay, so we get somebody in Japan and we get Robbie X in Sheffield. And Robbie was a stand there with the TMDK shirt, ready to give it to Robbie X. And I was like, I called it. I absolutely called it. It's 100% happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we got is so much better. It's the best possible combination of events.
So I remember on Sunday, I'm just trying to see if I can find. Yeah, so Sunday, I remember sending you a text and saying, I said, "So, question: do you think Robbie X still joins TMDK today?" And you replied saying, "I do. It might be wishful thinking though." And I definitely felt that for me, there was that bit of wishful thinking, like, come on, like, because that's the thing with indie wrestling. Sometimes, like, you think these things are going to happen. We all thought Michael Oku was going to bloody appear at Wembley, didn't we? Like,
wrestlers love working the fans, right?
And Robbie X seems to be one of those ones in particular. I don't know what it is about Robbie X, but if he sees anything with his name on, the guy goes fully into it, it seems. And I love that.
He doesn't break kayfabe.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I was talking to him in Sheffield, and I was kind of like talking to him about Japan, and just being like, if this kind of goes how I'm hoping it's going to go, this is going to be amazing. And he's just sort of like, well, who knows where it's going to go? It hasn't happened yet. And it's like he's like TK Cooper, like some of these guys, they will not ever break character, and it's I love it. I think it's classic. It's a very respectful thing. I'm watching the Vince McMahon documentary at the moment. You see the bit. Have you watched it?
Oh, I've watched it. Yeah.
I like the thing about with the Undertaker just being like when they were talking about the curtain call, just like I fucking hate it. Like never ever do that. Don't break the business. But I remember at the start of the year, I did the Tea and Tights podcast. And we predicted what we thought the Copper Box card would be before any announcements. So this was before the Revolution Rumble. It must have been around high stakes time.
Yeah.
And I called for Robbie X versus Zack Sabre Jr. It's like one of the only Zack Sabre Jr. matches we haven't seen from this, the crop of Rev Pro top talents, and it would be such a fascinating encounter because, on one hand, it's a great styles clash between technical, grounded Zach and high-flying Robbie. But Robbie's a really underrated technical wrestler too.
He is.
So you know he can have a really, really great match with him. I think this has got like match of the night written all over it for the Global Wars. And that's got Tomohiro Ishii versus Luke Jacobs in the main event.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
The match of the night, which just says everything about it.
Yeah, and not only that, we've got Azumi versus Kanji again, which when I saw that, I was like, that could be match of the night. Like, it's crazy that we're saying about every match gets announced. And when they said
that card now, we'll talk about it at the end after we've talked about the main event of Sheffield, but that card now pretty much looks like it's full. It's crazy how much has been announced without it feeling like anything's been announced yet.
Yeah, it does. Like when one of your, and when I say, I don't want to say weakest because it's not, but when one of the ones that I'm going, like probably, like I've got higher hopes for the other matches, it's Michael Oku versus RKJ, which I've got really high hopes for.
Which we've fucking waited 4 years for.
Yeah, it shows you the level of what we've got. But yeah, and just to round out the British J-Cup first round, Dante Martin went over Robbie X, which I know that a lot of us felt that Robbie's going to win for the second time. But I don't know, to me it just felt right that like he went out in the first round because it's allowed the focus to shift onto other guys as well, which I quite liked. You had a couple of imports, you had a couple of Brits in the final, and it was nicely balanced. You had Top Flight in there, so you had a proper faction it going in there, tag team going in there. You had Lykos 2, you had Cameron Khai getting a big win as well, a statement win over Robbie Eagles.
I don't think Cameron gets as big a reaction for the main event if Robbie's in it as well.
Yeah, this felt like it was to showcase Cameron.
Like last year, it felt really. At the time, I remember thinking when Robbie went out to Mascara Dorada in the same spot, the fourth spot of the J Cup last year. And I chatted to some people at the break, and they were like, "Oh, gutted that Robbie went out. Like really disagree. Like he should have gone through to the final. That he could still not win it, but." Like he should have been in the final, and I remember thinking to myself, and at the time, and saying that this way everyone's going to cheer for Leon.
Yeah,
the whole crowd is going to be behind Leon. There's not going to be any split, and then for it's going to be an even bigger moment for Leon when he wins it.
Yeah,
and like that, it's that kind of like Andy definitely thinks about everything on that level when he thinks about reactions. He thinks about how the crowd are going to respond. So Robbie, who remarkably wasn't as over in Stevenage this time as he normally is, like Stevenage and St Neots are referred to in canon as Robbie X country. He's like the most. It's basically in St Neots, Robbie X is king. And in Stevenage, like you've got Robbie X and Michael Oku, and then you've got everybody else. Like they get the biggest reactions. Like, I remember Robbie X matches in Stevenage where they don't wrestle for the first 5 minutes because the crowd are literally just going through every single Robbie X song, and there's like 6 of them, and you just go from one to the other, and you just be there lapping it up. It was different this time, a different audience, different people, and some big import names, which probably drew some of the love towards them. It's not like he didn't get a great reaction, but he wasn't like the king of Stevenage this month. And I think that him going out meant that you had the support. You actually had him going out meant that the final was really evenly split. Okay, I don't know if anybody heard that. That was an Alexa voice going off saying, "I'm in my bed," which was an important announcement that everybody needed to hear from my little boy. I didn't even know there was a device in here.
I heard because I was just looking at mine because I've got one on my desk next to me, and I heard the little ding, and I was like, and then I thought it said "Good night, Dad," which is what I thought it came across saying. Which if that was being said on mine.
So it's 9:15 that we're recording this for now. I normally put him to bed at 9 o'clock. And so Emily's obviously doing it tonight. So I wonder if she's just told him to go up and get into bed.
Yeah.
And she'll come in and say goodnight in a minute. And then there's Alexa devices in every room of this house.
Yeah,
My wife is an absolute technie wizard. She loves it.
I've got 3 of them at home. One in my office, one in the kitchen, and one in the living room. Yeah.
I think we literally... We don't have them in the bathrooms, but every other room has one.
Yeah. Yeah,
I do quite like being able to play music on all of them at the same time, so the music's not loud everywhere.
Yeah,
it's not like you've got one device that's blaring it out that you can hear it around the house. It's just
no matter where you walk in the house, everywhere. You can hit Nick Cave wherever you walk.
Yeah, and you're just pottering around the house doing odds and sods, and you just wherever you go, you can still hear it. That's
nice. Like that. Yeah.
Anyway, before Isaac interrupted us. Yeah, I feel like with Robbie going out, you had this really nice 25% split between the 4 in the final. And although it was it might have been a 5% more for Leo Rush than it was for Lykos 2, or 5% more for Dante than it was Cameron, that also evolved throughout the match. So Cameron, after he was attacked by Will Caven, got even more support. Once Cameron went out, the support for Lykos 2 went even further up. And it was really well judged, a really entertaining main event as well, and most importantly, the right winner.
Yeah, absolutely. It was all great. And you know what, we've kind of touched a little bit on the palate cleanser matches, but let's just touch over them again. Luke Jacobs defeats one called Manders. Really great show for Manders. It was that kind of match where, again, we said, I can't say I was am I being entirely unbiased? There is that level of, like you said, I've grown fond of the guy because of just how lovely it's been interacting with him and dealing with him. But even then, he went out and just earned he's got his opportunity, and he's earned a return trip.
And you know what? I said this to him as well. I said, when British wrestlers come and work Rev Pro, they're auditioning. But they put in 110% because they're trying to impress Andy. When the European guys come over, they're doing exactly the same. 110% to impress Andy. And if it's not 110%, they don't tend to come back. When the American indie wrestlers have come over for Rev Pro, I think there have been examples in the past where people have come over and they haven't given it 110%. They've given it a really solid performance. They've done their job. They did what they got paid for. They did a really accomplished performance. But it feels like they've kept a little bit in the chamber because they're not, in their eyes, auditioning. They don't see it as, and maybe I'm completely wide of the mark, but it's a privilege to wrestle for Rev Pro. Rev Pro is the biggest promotion in all of Europe and arguably the biggest independent promotion in the world. So anyone who's wrestling for Rev Pro, look at fucking how hard Leo Rush works when he comes over. Do you know what I mean? Look at how proud he is to win the J Cup. Anyone that comes over has to put in 110%. And also, I'm not being funny, but the Rev Pro fans, we watch a lot of wrestling. We go to a lot of shows. If you're not putting in 110%, we're going to know it.
Yeah.
And Manders absolutely gave it 110%. You know what? You see him on Sunday. He's happy as Larry, speaking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I think it went well. I got really good feedback from Andy. Of course you got good feedback from Andy because you fucking smashed it out of the park."
Yeah.
And that is effectively it, isn't it? Because you got, surely you want to. All of these guys want to come back. They want to keep getting the opportunities. And maybe we don't see them every 6 months because their schedules don't work that way. But there's a potential to be able to come back every 6 months or every year or every 18 months. And one thing that I really, really liked was when you watch matches online, which is what we did to kind of, get to know Manders, there is so much stuff that happens in the ring live that you can't see when it's on demand, when it's on those channels.
Yeah.
And like hearing what he says in the ring, hearing the banter that he has with the wrestlers and the banter that he has with the crowd. And it was like, he's got proper crack. And I love that because it's something that not every wrestler has, right?
Yeah.
But it adds to him so much. The way he, mate, one of my highlights of the weekend, I don't know if it picked it up on the feed or not, but when he pinned Josh James in Sheffield, and he picked him up, and he shook his hand, and he held his hand up, and he slapped him on the arse as he left the ring, as if to be like, well done, lad. You did a good job. It was so fucking funny. Like, the crowd, like, pissed themselves laughing at it. And it was so perfect in character as well.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it. Manders was big game hunting against Luke Jacobs because Luke Jacobs got a championship match. He's got a championship, and he could get a championship match, out of it. Josh James is big game hunting against Manders because Manders is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like GCW regular, going out to Germany this weekend to wrestle in the tag league. Like, he's what Josh James wants to become in time, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's the goal that he's working towards. So therefore, Manders giving him the patronising pat on the head and slap on the arse was just perfect. I loved both matches. I think my favourite was the Josh James one. But again, there's probably some subjective bias in there because Manders Manders won that one, and I really enjoyed him getting the winning match. Felt weird not cheering for Josh James at a Rev Pro show, but I couldn't not cheer for Manders. And I'll be honest, I went into it thinking I'll wear my Manders shirt, I'll cheer for Manders because then because everybody else will probably be cheering for Josh. Josh gets really good reactions in Sheffield, but people clearly watched Manders' show on the J Cup and took to him, or they were really familiar with him because from the minute he came out, like, Manders was getting cheers from everybody there. They loved him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think he just people recognise the effort and the grind, and he absolutely he gave it everything. Didn't leave anything in the locker. Really enjoyed both his performances and can't wait to see him again.
He absolutely, like you said, he knew the opportunity that was there, and we've had some conversation with him privately where, you know what, the guy was, again, really humble about a lot of things, and just said he can see this as it's been, like you said, a privilege to come and work somewhere like Rev Pro, and I just love that he's come in, he's done it all the right way. Just remember as well, we got Manders on our podcast before everyone saw what he was all about. We got to highlight who this guy was, and I'm so glad we did that and had that opportunity to do that, and just, again, showcase a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. One of my favourite things was, and I've said it on Twitter a couple of times now, when we were doing the sound check, and I said, can you just say something for me? And he just got into the camera and he went, you bloody wanker. And then gave that cackle, that cackle that he has, and that comes across a few times in the podcast, especially with the way he had his phone and he would cackle and he would look right into the phone. Loved it. And when we were in the queue waiting at the merch stand, he just looked up at me while he was with someone else who was getting something, and he went, "How you doing, you bloody wanker?" And then I think during the match, he kept calling Luke lad. And I turned around to him and I was like, oh, he's not said it yet, Dave. And then 2 minutes later, he's like, come on, you wanker. And it was just like, oh. The guy, he just taps into, I think that's it. He's tapping into what our culture's about a little bit. And understanding.
He's got British banter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you know what? A lot of people don't get British banter. We're a weird country. We're weird people. Mm-hmm. I think notoriously Brits are. I think we confuse the rest of the world sometimes with with how we interact with each other and how we are. And he seems to get it. He's like a proper honorary Brit.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it. Zozaya versus JJ Gale. What's your thoughts on that one?
I thought it was I was going to say an over delivery, but that seems like, again, like faint praise, because I mean, it's Zozaya and it's JJ Gale. Of course it was going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I did think that, given how much star power there was in the J Cup matches, how the Manders and Luke match was clearly going to be so popular because it was so different to everything else. It was like, what are JJ and Zozaya going to do that's going to differentiate themselves from everything else? They need to have a match where it's clear that they're not cruiserweights.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're not in this tournament. They're too big. They're too tall. They're too strong. Too heavy. They're not sub 205, despite the fact that they both probably are, or are like close to that limit. But I thought that their match was, again, like, Zozaya always delivers. JJ has become super consistent this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Really has.
I feel like he's gone up a level in the sense that he's grown into the position he is in the card.
Mm-hmm.
And his matches, there is never ever a doubt that his match won't be like stellar.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, in the past, you might look at a match and be like, "Oh, cool! Like, JJ's wrestling so and so. That'll be good," and that, that's a compliment. And there are some people now where you look and be like, "Oh, that'll be good," but now it's like, "Oh, JJ's wrestling that person. That'll be great." And you never say good anymore. You just say great. That'll be great. That'll be great.
Absolutely.
And you know what? It was great, but actually, I think it was still an over delivery at how great it was. They had me on the hook. There were some near falls again in that final stretch that I was completely sold on. Could not call who was going to win it, because, Zozaya lost to Barbaro on Sunday. Zozaya's in a position now where, he won almost every match he was in for the first sort of 10 matches.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sustainable. He can't do that forever. And I don't want him to do that forever. I think that when wrestlers have this aura because they never lose, that's quite a dangerous thing, because when they do then lose, does all the aura go away? And there's been no talk of an undefeated streak or anything like that, where they could have built that up, because he did have a streak at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't need it. He doesn't need any of this. He's of his story, his character, his age, his experience. Of course, the guy's going to lose from time to time.
Of course, yeah.
He's not, if we're talking football analogies, he's not Manchester City yet. He's like the next big thing. He's not the big thing yet. I mean, wrestling-wise, he's good enough to be the big thing already. But storyline-wise, he is growing to that level. When he beat Michael Oku and when he beat Luke Jacobs, they were a shock within sort of canon. And his reactions and everybody else's reactions to it were, these are shocking moments.
Mm-hmm.
When he's the big thing, it won't be shocking that he beats them. It will be expected that he can beat them.
Absolutely.
So I thought JJ might go over here. But again, it worked really nicely. So Zaya went over, and then on Sunday, Barbaro got the moment, but he had to cheat to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
JJ looked great despite the defeat. And again, I'm someone who talks about it all the time. I talk about form, and I talk about momentum, and I talk about statistics. But there is a big difference between losing matches against top talents and losing matches against guys.
Yeah.
JJ has lost a lot of matches in 2024. He hasn't lost any matches against anyone who's just like a guy. He's only lost against big fish. And he, in storyline, is trying to prove that he's a big fish.
Yeah.
He's just not the biggest fish yet. And when he's going to become one of those big fish, one of the very, very big fish, that'll be when he can beat one of the other big fish.
Yeah,
so, it's all building, and it's just so layered and textured that
it reminds me of sort of like late 90s, early 2000s WWF, right?
Yep.
And apologies for who the comparisons here, but it was like JJ feels like that Jericho, Benoit, even Kane kind of role where they are knocking at the door. Like, you could put them in that main event match, and Tomohiro Ishii, right, wasn't the main event, but could have been a main event, right? That could be, that was so great. And like, you give them that opportunity, you know they can do it. But there's still a level for them to go before the Stone Colds, the Rocks, the Triple H's. There's that gulf between where they were there and where they are there. It will come for him, absolutely come for him. I'll be interested to know your thoughts on the stuff with Charlie Sterling.
That was really out of left field. Sheffield's a really interesting one because there's always wrestlers in Sheffield. There's always guys who just turn up.
Because Reese and Rogan didn't they, as well?
Have you been to the network before?
Nope, it's far too far for me to get to on a work night.
It's like 6 hours each way for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you walk in, you're walking into this like proper dirty, grimy, like grunge bar. So I fucking love it. And you've got the bar straight down here on your left-hand side. The ring's over here. Seating goes around it. And at the back here, you've just got a couple of sofas. And often when you walk in, you know, I've been there before plenty of times where I'm the first one in the queue, so I'm the first one through the door, and there's already people in there and they're all sitting on the sofas. And you walk in and you have a little look and you're like, I know you. Saxon Huxley was there last time. But there's always, you know, Will Cruz I've seen there before. There's always like people sort of like there hanging out. So I didn't see Charlie there. But had I seen Charlie there, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. It would have just been like, oh, cool, Charlie Sterling's here today. Just decided to come and have a little look. And therefore, also, it's like, you don't look at them and be like, they're clearly here for a reason. I remember, I can't think what match it was. I've got an idea. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was Kanji and Danny Luna versus Alex Windsor and Mercedes Blaze. And I think we're talking about the tail end of last year. But Sapphire Reed was at the show and she was sitting at the 229 where True and Lacey often sit.
Yeah.
When they're not on the show, but they just come and watch. And they sit kind of next to the merch stand. So they're not working, they're not doing merch. They're there
to watch. There, yeah.
But they're just there. And that's where Sapphire was. And you were like, okay, Sapphire's come to see the show. And then she interfered in the match. And you're like, oh shit, she was there the whole time, but we just assumed. So they do this really, really well. Fuck me, Charlie Sterling's massive.
Yes, he's huge.
Like, I've seen him before. I saw him. I've seen him in the last time he was in Rev Pro with the Smoking Aces, and I remember a big 8-man match at York Hall with Sunshine Machine and Lykos Gym and Shota and Yuta. Shota and Yota. But mate, the dude just looks like he's grown an extra foot and put on an extra 50 pounds. He had absolute Kevin Nash kind of vibes all over him. And my biggest takeaway was I just sat there staring at him thinking, God, you're handsome. I wish I had hair like you. But I loved the unpredictability of it.
Yeah,
I had a strong feeling something was going to happen. I couldn't see it being a 6-match card. I thought it might be a Cutthroat Collective thing, but I'm also very much aware that it's like, well, Alex is away with Will on holiday. Sapphire's in America. Lizzie's here, there, and everywhere. Nina's here, there, and everywhere. And Mercedes doesn't have much of a social media presence, so it's quite hard to know where she is at any time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that was possible, but I thought something would happen. So when Charlie came out, it was like, okay, cool. I like this. I love the fact that it was an impromptu match, but no one was wearing ring gear.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that once again they took the piss with Dynamite Lee Dawson, and I love it because it's not belittling the guy. His whole character is that he's this plucky underdog babyface contender. So it's really good fun that they take the piss out of him. It's a bit like Brandon. It's a bit like Brandon Cutler when the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler were faces, and the way that you could get to the Young Bucks by belittling Brandon Cutler or Michael Nakazawa, like that sort of thing. And Dynamite got mugged off at the Revolution Rumble. He got mugged off by Dan Maloney last year in St. Neots. He got mugged off in Southampton. Now he's got mugged off in Sheffield. It's a great little story beat that's happening below the level of all the major story beats.
Yeah.
I'm counting it as a JJ Gale match and a Charlie Sterling match that I've now seen. It's gone down on the official list of matches.
It's made cage match.
A bell was rung and JJ was announced the winner. So I'm assuming a 10 count was done. I was so preoccupied just staring at Charlie that I didn't actually pay attention to whether or not if the ref was counting or not. But I'm up for it. I'm hoping it's going to be a 229 match. And if not, a Southampton match. At the time of recording, it's Tuesday and we know nothing for the 229 on Sunday. So I'm expecting one of those kind of let's drop the 229 cards that will happen on like Wednesday or Thursday of this week, or it will be 3 matches announced on Wednesday, 2 matches announced on Thursday, 2 more matches announced on Friday, that sort of thing. I mean, I'm all here for it. I think most people that go to the 229 just buy their tickets, and I don't think many people are waiting till the last minute. Also, I think I think a lot of people that do wait to the last minute literally wait until like the day before. I know lots of people now from wrestling who have said like, yeah, I might go to the 229 on Sunday, might not, going to kind of see how Saturday goes. In which case it's like, well, there's no rush to get a card out then, is there? Because you've either got the people that buy their tickets well in advance, and then you've got the people that are happy to make a last minute decision.
Yeah.
In which case, as long as the card's up by Friday, people have got Friday night and Saturday to decide if they fancy it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
I quite like it. I've got no problem with when they announce cards. Sometimes I'm impatient, but then I also love the dopamine hit of, oh, a match's been announced. Oh, a match's been announced. It's a bit like, piece of candy. Oh, piece of candy. Yeah. So Charlie Sterling versus JJ Gale in the 229, or Charlie Sterling versus JJ Gale in Southampton would be really good fun. What I would really like is Charlie Sterling versus Dynamite Lee Dawson in the 229, and then Charlie Sterling versus JJ Gale in Southampton.
Yeah, I think we're getting in Southampton. That's what I think we're getting.
JJ in Southampton is always a really big deal. And Charlie versus Dynamite in the 229 means Charlie gets to annihilate and murder Dynamite and look fucking boss doing it.
Absolutely.
It would be really good to set up the match with JJ.
Yeah, and you could also, in Southampton, you could have JJ lose, right? Mm-hmm. You could, because they've also got the hometown hero in the match that's been announced. So that is a genuine thing, though, isn't it? That like normally you kind of look and go, right, we've got our hometown hero here, like they're going to be the folk, but you're in a situation with Francisco where you could legitimately have JJ Gale lose, but you've still got your hometown.
You could easily do something a bit dirty to beat JJ, get a low blow on him or something like that, and beat him that way, and then you've still got the big Francisco match to come.
Absolutely. As we're nearing the 2-hour mark here, Dave, shall we just do some quick fire bits on the remaining matches we've got here and just talk about them? Now, I've only seen half the show for Sheffield because technical issues, and I know there was definitely some technical issues in that ring, but technical issues meant I haven't seen all of the matches. So I've got to catch up myself on Manders versus Joshua James. Luke Jacobs versus Jay Joshua. How was that?
Oh mate, yeah, that was class. And what I liked about it was, have you got a cage match there? Has it got a time?
I do. 11 minutes, 4 seconds.
How long? Sorry.
11:04.
Perfect. Yeah, it was two big men wrestling a big man match. Don't need to go long.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Joshua looked class. Like he looks. You know, we talked. I talked about it. His match with RKJ was good. His match with JJ Gale was really good. His match with Leon Slater was really good. Like he's grown and grown and grown. But this one was like, I'm here now.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see me every week. Like you're going to see me regularly, and it's no longer surprising when he puts on this great match because it's like, cool. I know what to expect now. I expect greatness, and that's what he delivers.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the match. I loved the fact that it was like literally not a second wasted. It was the exact amount of time it needed to be to start this show, and it set such a high bar for everybody else to follow.
Yeah.
It was also a very different match to Manders versus Josh James, despite the fact that on paper it's two big hoss fights.
Yeah.
And I liked that as well. It was really well booked. Great performance from both of them. Luke had his big, bringing the championship to Sheffield for the first time moment. Jay Joshua looked class, and can't wait to see what's next for him.
Yeah, that belt looks just right on Luke Jacobs and Jay Joshua. What I would really like to see now is I'd like to see him start to rack up some wins. I think we've had some really great matches. Like we're starting to have these almost like the showcase matches. Like you said, when he's losing, he's not losing to just like guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's losing to the big guys, right? So there's that sort of thing. Now we know what he's about. Let's start getting some wins under his belt. Be great to see. RKJ versus Mike DeVecchio. Now I have to say this one surprised me, right? So this one clocked in at 19 minutes. Didn't feel that long at all.
The last one.
Yeah, did not feel like it was on for 19 minutes.
Yeah.
It shocked me that we went 2-0 RKJ.
I really love the fact that they did because I hate tropes. I hate tropes in wrestling so much so. That nothing takes me out of a moment than watching something where you're like, this is contrived. And one of the biggest things with 2 out of 3 falls matches is that they follow such a clear formula. But Rev Pro are happy to mess with that. Will Caven lost to Robbie X 2-0 instantly. It's 2 years ago. We've then had a couple of 2 out of 3 falls matches. We had one with Kanji and Sapphire Reed that went 2-1. But this one went 2-0. Mike DeVecchio, GWF champion, lost 2-0 to RKJ. But Mike DeVecchio didn't look remotely bad in this in any way. You look at what the first fall was. Mike DeVecchio has hit a big splash 20 feet across the ring, like corner to corner. RKJ's got his knees up. The dude has done one of the biggest leaps you're going to see any wrestler do. He is a big, heavy boy, and he's come down on RKJ's knees, and RKJ's rolled him up for a pin. That could happen in any match. Doesn't make the other person look stupid. It's not like a schoolboy roll up. It's a really high impact blow followed by a really quick small package. So that worked perfectly. And then RKJ hit the Kishi driver. Now the Kishi driver for me, I don't personally, I would happily never see RKJ do a muscle buster again. I'd happily never see him do the Styles Clash again. I'm not very fond of the, I know some wrestlers use other people's moves, but it's normally something that they've done from after they've wrestled them. So, Ospreay uses the phenomenal forearm from after he wrestled Styles, that sort of thing. And there are lots of moves where it's like, well, everyone does the DDT. Like, everybody does the super kick. Luke Jacobs has started doing a spear.
Yeah.
So do loads of people, but it's not his big finishing move. His big finishing move is still the hypersonic missile or the screwdriver. No one else is doing a screwdriver, and his hypersonic missile, his big lariat, looks like it should finish a match. The Kishi driver's there. The Kishi driver should be a killer. You hit the Kishi driver, you get a pin. Protect that. Yep. Don't let anybody kick out from it. Yep. Let them kick out from anything else you want to do, but don't let them kick out the Kishi driver. And then RKJ doesn't need to do the muscle buster anymore. And to be fair, he has stopped doing it. And I'm sure there are loads of people that absolutely love him doing it and think that he should keep doing it. But if it were me, the Kishi driver's the one to protect. So I love the fact that he beat Mike DeVecchio with that.
Yeah.
I don't think Mike looked in. I don't think if he'd lost 2-1 rather than 2-0, it would have made him look any better than the match already did make him look.
No.
But the negative of him winning 2-1 would be they followed the traditional 2 out of 3 falls format, and as a consequence, you could say that the match followed that kind of trope.
Yeah.
I don't know, for anyone who wasn't there, I don't think the feed necessarily showed. I'm just going to grab the mitten. I don't think the feed necessarily showed what happened to the ring. So Mike DeVecchio jumped up onto the top rope to deliver a superplex to RKJ. It was so high impact. Like they hit it so hard, both big heavy dudes, and literally one of the boards just popped out of place. And it was like there was this dome in the middle of the ring, like right in the middle of the ring. They finished the match around it. They literally wrestled around it. And it was quite scary. You were like, shit, if one of them lands on that, that's going to really hurt. But fortunately, it happened right at the end of their match anyway. I don't know if they went home early. If they did, it didn't feel like it. It felt like they went home at the right time. And then we got a really long break, so that literally, I mean, the guys worked their arses off to rebuild that ring.
Yeah, you can see it on the feed.
All hands to the deck. And do you know what? No one gave a shit at all, because Robbie Eagles came out and chatted to the fans. Robbie X was chatting to the fans. Mike DeVecchio was. Like, loads of people were there, out kind of mingling and talking to the fans. And everyone else was just watching the ring, being like, I've never seen this before. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's one of those things where it's like, but we don't want the curtain to be pulled back. We don't want to know, like what really is underneath a wrestling ring. You're like, why? Because what's underneath a wrestling ring actually makes wrestling look even more impressive, because it's just big, solid wooden slats with a really thin mat on top of it. If anything, it's like, fuck, no wonder they look like they're knackered at the end of a match. They've been crashed onto that loads of times. So
absolutely, my friend.
I think Mike DeVecchio is one of those people where I'm assuming Andy's booked him based on his reputation, having seen some of his matches, and thought, let's see what this guy's all about. And he's come in and literally just been like, undeniable from the moment we got it.
Yeah. And
I will be shocked if we don't see Mike DeVecchio on a pretty regular basis. Maybe not, he's a very in-demand guy. We're maybe not going to see him every show, but I'd expect that it'll be like Shigehiro Irie. We're never going to go very long without a Shiggy match in Rev Pro, and I think it'll be the same with Mike DeVecchio.
I think that's a good shout, and I'd love to see that. And that brings us on to the final match. And we've spoken a lot about a lot of the guys involved already, but we'll just kind of touch on it again. The 6-man tag team match of Leo Rush, Dante Martin, and Cameron Khai versus, well, a team that I put out there and into the ether. Kieran Lacey, Mark True, and Will Caven. Quite nice seeing one of your proposed creations manifested.
They look so good together as well.
Why can't I manifest the Euro Millions numbers? That would be good. They worked really nicely as a unit. They came across well. I love that Mark True's now no longer wearing the Rev Pro beanie. it's now a beanie which says mug across it,
Yeah.
which I love that.
On the like bicep tape as well.
Yeah, I thought they looked really good. I loved how, because when this one was booked, this just felt like just a match, right? And then the stuff that happened with the J Cup, the way Haven attacked Cameron Khai, which we thought was coming. We were like, does this kind of look like it's highlighting that Cameron's going to win the J Cup? Like, and also the way they booked around it to have it all make complete sense as to why these guys were all in the ring. I thought it worked really well.
Like they really foreshadowed, but they foreshadowed multiple things, because you look at this match and you're like, oh, okay, so Dante or Leo or Cameron Khai could be the one to win the J Cup with this match on the card. But at the same time, you've also got Robbie Eagles on the show and Cavenario on the show. So you're like, well, it could be that, and obviously Robbie X, sorry, it could be that this match is a win for Cave and True and Lacey against, you know, using all their cheating methods. And then the winner of the J Cup comes out and challenges Will Caven. So it was really nicely set up. What I really liked was the fact that Caven and Leo were one story, and then Caven and Cameron was another story, and then you've got True and Lacey just playing spoilers, and Dante there just, you know, being fucking Dante Martin, doing wildly impressive things.
Yeah,
it was and what I also loved, it was a trios main event when they're advertising for a trios tournament. With, you know, Sheffield to Coventry, that's a doable commute.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? The amount of distance that people drive for a wrestling show, you know, not everyone has that luxury. But there will be lots of people at the network there who could look at that and be like, hey, I fancy Coventry on a Saturday afternoon, or I fancy Coventry on a Sunday afternoon. I could do that. So it just felt good, strategic booking, plus a really worthy main event. And it's set up 2 future matches, because we know we've got Leo Rush versus Will Caven in the pipeline. But because Cameron pinned Caven in this 6-man, Leo has said that Caven should wrestle Cameron Khai first, and has announced that for Global Wars. Leo's issued an open challenge at Global Wars, and then we'll get Leo versus Caven further down the line. I think this is really a really good use of people, and it makes another Caven and Cameron Khai match feel even more special. It also adds a really nice level of like doubt to the outcome, because I could completely foresee Cameron Khai beating Will Caven and then wrestling Leo Rush.
Yeah.
It's not like the match has to be Leo Rush versus Will Caven for it to make sense.
It doesn't.
Because Leo versus Cameron, they've built a really nice story there as well. That feels like a match that will happen regardless. So, yeah, again, I mean, we keep saying it, but just really good booking and really rewarding matches. And the Global Wars card now looks stacked, because we know already announced graphics are up for Ishii versus Jacobs. So that's 1. Azumi versus Kanji, it's 2. Zach versus Robbie X is 3. Cameron versus Will Caven, the graphic hasn't dropped, but has basically been announced. The Leo Rush Open Challenge. Plus, then you've got Mina Shirakawa announced for it. Mascara Dorada announced for it. Titan announced for it. So could Dorado or Titan be the one to challenge Leo Rush? And then, if not, you've got 8 matches there.
Yeah.
It's pretty full on. I think we'll have a full Global Wars card very soon.
Yeah, because I know Andy basically came out and said a couple of days ago to expect to see a full picture soon because meet and greets are going on sale for this as well. So of course they're gonna want to get meet and greets out there with the talent that are available. So interesting. Yeah, I like the booking of it. I was a bit surprised with how they went with it. I thought when Leo was talking about Cameron, I thought it was going to go into a triple threat. That's where I thought we were going with that.
I thought that too.
So I was a bit surprised.
And you know what? I was a little disappointed at that prospect. I thought that's where it was going, and my immediate gut feeling was, no, I'd rather watch Leo's singles match versus Caven or Leo's singles match versus Khai. So I'm glad that they didn't do that. I feel like this is the best possible outcome.
Yeah, as long as I kind of wanted it because I wanted to see Cameron and Leo. So as long as that comes at some point down the line, I'll be cool with that. But another thing as well to kind of speculate on who Mina Shirakawa could be up against. On Raw Quest, they've announced that Mina Shirakawa and Kanji versus Azumi and Danny Luna. So I wonder whether or not that gets run back because we did say as well about Mina potentially getting another win before eventually losing it down the line. So could they run that match back with people?
I'd more than happily watch that again.
Yeah, same. And I think as well, like having it on a comparatively smaller show, right? It allows that bit more time, doesn't it, in the match? And I find that like sometimes these matches get lost in a big card, right? Because you're just when you're there live. I mean, because when you're actually there in the arena, and it's quite a big place in the Copper Box. So I'm quite looking forward to, if that is the match, to see it in a much smaller, intimate environment. That is the Doncaster Dome, which is probably the Doncaster Dome is probably a slightly bigger version of Stevenage. That's how I describe it. Stevenage on a bit of a bigger scale. That's what we're looking at there. So, I'm really looking forward to, and just looking forward to see what comes out. But overall, really happy with both shows this weekend. Love the direction we've gone from, like being we're here. To now be like, right, okay, we've got Global Wars matches out there. We're starting to get Southampton matches out there. We've got direction for guys who beforehand we're like, we don't know where they're going. We can start to see these breadcrumbs coming out. Just wonderful weekend of wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I just realised I knew there was a match I was missing from Global Wars. Obviously, RKJ and Michael Oku for the number one contendership as well. So, you know, if Leo Rush doesn't wrestle Titan or Mascara Dorada, and Titan and Mascara Dorada don't wrestle each other, that's 9 matches there. So it will be really interesting to see, is it going to be 9 matches, or are some of those matches going to be combined to make an 8 match card instead? But it's something I'm really excited for. I know there will be some people out there who are like, it's Global Wars. Why are we getting RKJ versus Michael Oku? Why are we getting Cameron Khai versus Will Caven? That's not a global war. But I prefer this personally because Global Wars for me, I want it to be full Rev Pro canon with some international dream matches. I want it to be big, high stakes Rev Pro matches with an international flavour. I don't want it to just be a series of exhibition matches.
Yeah,
or
I get that.
A series of championship matches where it's Rev Pro champion versus import, where the champion wins and the import goes back again. I want it to be more than that. We've kind of likened it to Forbidden Door, and I enjoy Forbidden Door, but I do sometimes feel that with Forbidden Door, it is just a series of exhibition matches.
That's what puts me off sometimes watching Forbidden Door. And I'll be honest, when Forbidden Door got announced for London, I was like, that feels like one I could skip if I wanted to, because as great as the wrestling will be, like for me, it's exhibition matches, and I'm happy with some exhibition matches, but want those stories in there as well.
Yeah, and it's, everyone's entitled to their opinion there, and some people might just want to see the world's best from all around the world compete in a British show. And, you will see that. You just might not see it in every single match because some of the world's best are in Britain already, and we don't need to bring people in from around the world for it.
And to be fair, mate, if it wasn't for the Global Wars concept, I would not have seen the International Dream match, which was Lord Gideon Grey with Rishi Ghosh defeating Gado.
Love that.
Almost actually looking
so
at
much
it.
Love and respect for the Lord Gideon Grey.
Of course. But looking at that was the 3rd of October 2015. So almost 9 years to the day that I was there at that
you were
show.
A young man in those days, George.
I was a young man, mate. I was. Fuck off, Dave. Fuck off.
Manders isn't here to call you old, so I felt like I had to.
Oh, yeah. And that one, yeah, I'm just looking at the card again, and I still remember being like, who's this Naito fella? Oh, yeah. This Tanahashi guy, he seems all right.
This Tanahashi, he's not bad.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. I've heard of him. Yeah, he's pretty decent. Oh, Okada, yeah, I know he's supposed to be pretty good. Yeah, I did not appreciate the level of talent in front of me because I wasn't a New Japan guy at that time. And look, there is something to be said for that, right, as well, with Global Wars, that it's a really great way of getting people in who maybe aren't as familiar. And we like to think that everyone who watches Rev Pro watches a lot of everything. But as we've said to Manders when we were interviewing him and getting him ready for it, like a big portion of our audience watches everything. But there's a portion of our audience who just watches Rev Pro or just watches the British Indies. So actually, if you want to get someone hooked in and go, I've heard these guys are good, and it's got RKJ versus Michael Oku.
Yeah.
That's a reason why you can have these.
That's as big a match as Rev Pro could pull out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's two of the biggest British names of this generation. And it's got the anticipation and build of knowing that they've kept them apart for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that the lads will absolutely thrive under the pressure of it, but there's pressure on that match. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is high expectations. You kept them apart for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Go and knock it out the park, and they will. It's Michael Oku and it's RKJ.
Yeah.
As RKJ said, it's 2 5-star boys.
Absolutely, it's going to be great. And just look at some of the last Global Wars show back in 2017. Josh Bodum defeats Rocky Romero. Fucking hell.
Was there a 2018 as well?
Well, I'm having a look now. Oh no, sorry, there was a 2018. How can I skip that one? Also, Toru Yano defeats Zach Gibson. Amazing. Yeah, so the card for 2018, so this is the card of the last one, opens up Kushida versus Curtis Chapman.
Nice.
LIJ, Evil and Sonada defeats Ringkampf, the Timothy Thatcher and Walter.
Yep.
The Great Khan defeats Rishi Ghosh.
Yeah.
Naito defeats Chris Brooks. Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Haruki Goto.
Nice.
Oh, this is a match I didn't know I wanted to see, and I can go back and watch it on RevProOnDemand.com. Satoshi Kojima defeats Mark Davis.
Yeah.
ELP defeats Rocky Romero.
Yep.
Chris Ridgway defeats Will Ospreay.
Yep.
And Tomohiro Ishii defeats Minoru Suzuki.
25 minutes?
I was just going to say 25-minute match.
Yeah. It's a really good 25-minute watch as well.
Okay.
That, the 6 years that have passed, do you just think like the 6 years younger, both men just had that extra tank, that, extra level of their tank to be able to go to.
Yeah.
I've watched all the Global Wars on Pro On Demand. They're really, really enjoyable watches, but I genuinely believe, and it's not recency bias, and it's not just because I'm a mark, I genuinely believe this year's Global Wars will be the best one of the lot.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to it. It looks really great on paper. And I've only been to one Global Wars, only watched one Global Wars, and that was one that I really enjoyed being there for because I got AJ Styles versus Jushin Thunder Liger. But yeah, I'm looking forward to travelling up to the Doncaster Dome in a mere 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks, is it?
Yeah, I keep thinking there's an extra week. I said this to you before we started. I keep thinking there's an extra week in between this week and Southampton. So, yeah, Southampton next weekend, Doncaster Dome the following weekend. Oh, what a couple of weeks it's going to be, David.
We are flying, mate. Can't
Absolutely. Wait. Right, well, on that note, let's end it there. It has been a pleasure speaking Rev Pro with you, sir. Again, everyone, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, do everything you can. Feed the algorithm. Share on Twitter. X, feed the beast. Until next time, there, we are out of here. Catch you later, my friend.